Hi, welcome to Big Brothers, Big Sisters of New York City Skills for Success Job Readiness webinar. I'm Siobhan and I'll be taking you through pre-interview steps. This webinar will be a combination of lecture-style presentation as well as an interactive portion. Before we begin, please complete the Job Readiness Work Maturity Checklist pre-test if you have not done so already. You will find the Job Readiness Work Maturity pre-test on your Google Classroom. Today, we will be discussing what it means to be job ready. If you take a look at our agenda for this webinar, you will see that we will be moving through 6 different topics: preparing for the interview, attire, the handshake, interviewing tips, typical interview questions, and worst case scenarios. In order to prepare for the interview, there are a few things to do before the big day. Do your homework. Learn as much as you can about the company or college before the interview. Find out what services, products the company provides, how long they have been in business, whether the company is growing or downsizing, and the company's reputation. Make sure to read through any materials the interviewer sends. An interviewer will be impressed that you have made an effort to learn about the company or college. Make sure you know where you are going. Plan your route. Practice getting to the site of the interview a day or two before the interview date. The 2 most common ways an employer will contact you for an interview is by calling you on the phone or sending you an email. First impressions are important, whether it be in person, over the phone, or via email. When you answer a phone call that pertains to an interview or job offer, be mindful when you are answering the phone. Remember not to answer as if you were about to talk with a friend. Secondly, make sure you have an appropriate voicemail in case the prospective job or college needs to leave a message. Thirdly, speak to employers in a quiet place. An example of a quiet place would be a room where you can close the door. An example of a non-quiet place would be in a restaurant or on public transportation. As mentioned before, email is another way we can make good first impressions. It is important to make sure you have an appropriate email address that employers can reach you at. Here we can see the difference between an inappropriate email address and an appropriate email address. cutiekimx07@yahoo.com would be an example of an inappropriate email address. kcosta@gmail.com would be an example of an appropriate email address. When sending an email to a prospective employer, be sure to introduce yourself, use standard grammar and spelling, include a specific subject line, address the person you are writing to, be polite and when in doubt, be formal, and include an appropriate signature. The next 2 slides will show examples of what an inappropriate email looks like compared to what an appropriate email looks like. The next 2 slides will show examples of what an inappropriate email looks like compared to what an appropriate email looks like. When reading through the slide, please note the email address that is used, the use of grammar and punctuation, the inappropriate subject line, as well as the informal style and content of the message. As you can see, some arrows are pointing to what not to do in an email. For example, the first arrow is pointing at the email address that is used, cutiekimx07@yahoo.com, which would be an inappropriate email address to use when emailing a prospective employer. The second arrow is pointing at the punctuation used in the first sentence. Can you spot any other mistakes? Now that we have reviewed an example of an inappropriate email, let's take a look at what an example of an appropriate email looks like. Again, notice the email address used by Kim, the subject, grammar, punctuation, as well as the content within the message. A very common question asked during interviews, whether it be for job or college, is tell me about yourself. Although this question is all about you, it can sometimes be a difficult one to answer. To help you better understand the effective way to answer this question, please pull up the Tell Me About Yourself activity located on the Google Classroom and complete the sheet. When an interviewer asks this question, they want to get a sense of who you are. Some common areas you can start with when answering this question is about your education. Where do you go to school? Where do you live? Who do you live with? What are any extracurriculars, clubs, or hobbies that you are a part of? So, when answering these questions, it may sound something like the examples below. I am a high school senior at Life Sciences Secondary School. I have been active in student government and my school's film club for 3 years. My family and I have recently began trying out new recipes together. I was born and raised in Queens and have formed a strong sense of community here. Now that you have a better understanding of what it looks like to prepare for an interview, phone, and email etiquette, and how to answer the question, tell me about yourself. Let's move on to how to prepare for the day of the interview. On the day of the interview, be sure to make a copy or two of resume and bring that with you to the interview. Bring the completed job application or a copy of the job application if you applied online. Bring your working papers or a copy of your working papers. Bring a notepad and pen to take notes during the interview if needed. Hopefully everything you have reviewed so far has been helpful. Now that we have gone over the pre-interview steps, let's walk through the steps for the day of and after your interview. The last thing to prepare for before going into your interview is your attire. Picking out an outfit for any occasion can be difficult, so we came up with these tips to help you. 1. Start by researching the company's dress code. Choose clothes that make you feel comfortable and confident. Use your best judgment and don't overthink it. Avoid any revealing clothing. Choose clothing accommodating to the climate and season. Make sure to check for stains, snags, pet hairs, and holes. Ensure clothing is pressed and wrinkle-free. For example, if you are interviewing at a more casual workplace, professional-looking casual job interview attire is appropriate. This could mean dark jeans, a blouse, and a cardigan, a knee-length skirt and button-down shirt or blouse, dark jeans or slacks and button-down shirt or polo, any closed-toe shoes that are neat and clean. Both options can be worn with flats or heels to avoid open toe. Now it's time for the interview. We want to remember that first impressions are important. By now you have introduced yourself either over the phone or through email. Now it's time to make your first impression in person. Start by arriving on time. We like to say arriving 15 minutes before the interview shows that you are serious about the opportunity. As New Yorkers, we know that commuting can be unpredictable, so give yourself enough time in case there is subway congestion or traffic. Upon your arrival, make sure to greet everyone politely and announce why you are there and who you are scheduled to meet. For example, "Hi, my name is Taylor, and I am here for an interview with Kay at noon." When making a good first impression, be sure to avoid wearing too much cologne, makeup, or jewelry. Treat everyone with respect. Be mindful of your body language. Arrive 15 minutes before interview time. Punctuality is a major concern for employers. If you are unsure of how long your commute is, make a trial run before the day of the interview. The handshake. This is also part of your first impression. Remember that people often judge you by your handshake, so make sure it shows your confidence and personality. Make eye contact. Have a firm grip, but not like the Hulk. And be confident. If it is safe, practice with someone at home. There are some questions that come up in interviews no matter what job you are applying for, so you can practice your answers before the interview. Having the answers and developing them alongside your professional career is a useful skill to have. Let's review a few. Typical interview questions. One interview question that comes up almost no matter what is, tell me about your weaknesses. When answering this question, please keep in mind that if you're completely honest, you may be disadvantaging yourself. If you say that you don't have one, then you're not showing good self-awareness. If you're asked this question, give a small work-related flaw and show how you're working to improve it. Avoid cliches such as, I'm a perfectionist, or I work too hard. When thinking about your weaknesses, it is important to choose attributes that you are proactively working on or can demonstrate steps you are taking to turn that weakness into a strength. If you cannot identify how to find your weaknesses, turn to a friend or even a teacher to help you determine what you can improve on. Always remember that weaknesses are not permanent. And just because you have a few weaknesses does not mean that you are doomed. Being able to identify areas of improvement demonstrates that you are a well-rounded candidate. The next slide will show an example of an answer to tell me about your weaknesses. Example 1. Tell me about your weakness. Answer. I've been told by both friends and teachers that I am too impatient. When something has been identified as important to do, I want to work on it now and finish it as soon as possible. So I've learned to focus on prioritizing my own work, either by myself or with my teacher. I actually keep a list and share the top 5 items on that list with my teacher or advisor. This is a great example of how to verbalize your weakness but show growth opportunity areas. As a student, your teachers are among those who are most aware of your work ethic. Potential employees may be curious about how you work and prioritize responsibilities in school. Another example of a question that may be asked during an interview is, how would your teachers describe you? The average answer, oh, I guess they'd say I was an okay student. A better answer, my teacher would tell you that I work hard to get my assignments in on time and I'm not afraid to ask for help if needed. They'd also say that I try to be inclusive and encourage all my classmates to participate in class discussions. Example number 3 of questions most commonly asked during an interview. Why should I hire you? If you wrote a cover letter or CV for this job, it may be helpful to align your answer or reference points you made when answering this question. Take your strengths and apply them to aspects of the job. The average answer that may not grasp the interviewer's attention would look like, I really need the money so that I don't have to ask my parents for cash every time I want to hang out with my friends. Also, my mom said that I have to find something constructive to do after school. A better answer may be, I'm a reliable person. I'll arrive to work on time and do the best I can on the job. I've done volunteer work in the past, but now I'd like to gain actual work experience. If you hire me, you'll get someone who isn't afraid to learn. Do you see the areas of strengths in the better answer? We are going to be going over some helpful tips to help you be your most prepared self. Some helpful tips. Keep your phone switched off. Make sure you have positive body language. An example of this would be sitting up straight and facing the interviewer, making eye contact. Make sure you are active listening. This means making eye contact with the interviewer, nodding your head in agreement that you heard the interviewer and are following the conversation. Make sure you are not oversharing. Don't be too familiar with the interviewer, and take care to answer questions. And lastly, have 3 questions ready to ask the interviewer. Here are 3 examples of questions you can ask the interviewer. What do you like most about working at this company? How would you describe the company culture? What is a day-to-day task or responsibility of this position? Congratulations! With all this preparation and planning, you have nailed the interview, but you're not done yet. Most hiring managers pay very close attention to how well and how quickly you write a thank you email after the interview. We suggest sending a thank you note the same day as your interview. Remember to thank the interviewer for their time. Write a follow-up email immediately following the interview. Here you will see a thank you template. This template is a short and simple example of reinforcing your interest in the position and restating what makes you an ideal candidate for the available position. Make sure you are addressing the interviewer by his or her last name. Be sure to include contact information, both a number and email address, and lastly, a signature and your full name. We have extensively covered tips on preparing and completing an interview, but there still may be some anxieties about interviewing. Remember, being nervous or anxious about an interview is natural and okay. Together we will discuss some interview day worst-case scenarios and how to appropriately handle these situations. Example number 1. You are running late and there is no service on the subway. Send an email or call the office of the interviewer. Apologize and explain you were there as quickly as possible. Make sure to apologize when arriving. Say thank you for your patience. Example number 2. You spill something on your shirt. Acknowledge the stain before the interview starts. Own up to it at the start of the interview, show a little humor, and then forget about it. Keep the focus on you and the skill set you're bringing to the table. Example number 3. You are freezing on the interview questions. Stall with phrases like, good question, and let me think of the best example. Or ask the interviewer to clarify the question. Don't take too much time to come up with an answer, and if you are truly struggling, you can always ask to come back to a question later by saying, I'd like to give you a thoughtful answer. May I follow up at the end of the interview or afterward in an email? Example number 4. The interviewer is standoffish. It is rare, but it can happen. Don't let a rude interviewer push to a point where you want to bite back. Stay calm and collected. Focus on your skills and stay positive and extend the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you caught them at the end of a stressful time. Form a bridge. If you can sense tension, ask about their experience at the company so far. Exit the interview with grace. Thank you for joining us for Big Brothers Big Sisters Job Readiness webinar. Make sure to check out Big Brothers Big Sisters resume webinar to make sure it is ready for job applications. We hope that this was helpful in preparing you for your future interviews. Good luck!